Okay, so we have already seen that there are four main features of object oriented programming language. We are done with the first three, that is abstraction, encapsulation, and inheritance. So today we are going to see the fourth feature of object oriented programming language. So the fourth feature of object oriented programming language is polymorphism. Now, what is polymorphism? We are going to look in detail. So whenever we talk about the word polymorphism, first we need to understand what is the meaning of this word. So it says poly and morphism. So what is the meaning of poly? Poly means multiple and morphism means forms. So it is a Greek word and which has the meaning that something which is having multiple forms. So multiple forms means in different situation that can behave in different way. So that is the meaning of this word polymorphism. And polymorphism is a characteristics of being able to assign different meaning to a particular symbol or operator or a method, you can say, in different context. That means a symbol or a operator or a method, depending upon the context in which it is referred, will be behaving differently. That is polymorphism in object oriented programming. So we'll take a simple example to understand polymorphism. You can say one student, the same student, depending on maybe the subject or maybe depending upon the lecture timings, or if he or she might have slept late yesterday, or maybe the teacher, or whatever be the reason, same student in different lectures behaves in different way. In some of the lectures he might be okay or fine. In some of the lecture he might be too sleepy or too happy to attend the lecture. That is, the same student might be behaving in different ways depending upon which subject lecture or what is the time of the lecture. So that is your real life example of polymorphism. The same thing behaving in different ways depending upon the situation. So now we'll talk in terms of object oriented programming. So we can say polymorphism is one of the feature of object oriented programming that allows the objects to behave differently in different condition. So we know whenever we are talking about object oriented, everything that we need to perform, all the works that we need to do, need an object. So we are using that object, and depending upon the condition in which we are using that object, the behavior of the object may change. So polymorphism broadly, if we are talking, there are two type of polymorphism. One is compile time polymorphism and the second one is runtime polymorphism. Compile time, as the word only say, that during the time of compilation, it will be decided that out of the multiple forms, which form will be active. So, and this is also called as static or early binding. So we know polymorphism means an object or a method can behave in multiple forms, can behave differently on different situation. But when will we decide that this object is going to behave in this particular way? So for deciding that, the timing of deciding that which particular way this object is going to behave into, that is, could be either during the compilation time or during the run time. So this is compile time polymorphism, known as static or early binding. So like a question might be asked mentioning what is early binding. So you need to remember that compile time polymorphism is also known as static binding or early binding. Next is runtime polymorphism. The runtime is while the time of execution, it will be decided how that particular object is going to behave, and this is called as dynamic or late binding. Early binding, we all know that first compilation is done and after that the run time is there. So compile time definitely is going to be a early binding and run time will be a later stage binding, or you can say late binding. Now the next thing is, so we can say polymorphism are of two types, compile type polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. Now further, compile time polymorphism is divided into two categories. The first one is function overloading and the second one is operator overloading. And when we are talking about runtime polymorphism, it is again of two types, function overriding and virtual function. So today we'll try to cover up all these 4 types of polymorphism one by one. Okay, so first we are going to start with the function overloading. So compile time polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism, that is called as early binding. The binding which can be resolved at compile time by the compiler. So compiler is the ones who decides this binding, is known as static or early binding. And we have 2 examples, as we have said earlier, function overloading and operator overloading. Now what is function overloading? So one thing we know that we are going to talk about functions, and over, this word over means that multiple, like generally when we talk about function, there is one function with a single name with a single definition, but with function overloading there is over, you can say over samples of function. A single function might be having different definitions. So function overloading is a OOPS feature that allow us to have more than one function having the same name. So this same name is something important you need to remember. So there are multiple functions, all the functions are having the same name. But how are they different? They are different in terms of parameters that we pass to it, or you can say the input that is provided. So there are multiple functions with the same name, but what input you give to that function will decide that out of the multiple functions which are having the same name, which function is going to get selected for execution. That is function overloading. Now when we are saying that it should be different in terms of parameter list, what do we mean by parameter list? Parameter list means data type and sequence of the parameters. So whenever we are talking about parameter list, it is in terms of the data type of parameters and the number of the parameters. Actually it should not be sequence, it should be number of parameters that we are passing as input to the function. So we'll see a simple example. So you can see 3 functions here. Function number 1 is add, function number 2 is add, and function number 3 is add. So like till now whatever knowledge we have of programming, if we are going by that knowledge, then we will be really confused that if a single program is having 3 functions by the same name, then like whatever we know till now, we'll feel that there must be some error in the output if we are calling the add function. But in object oriented programming, because of polymorphism feature, we can have multiple functions in the same program with the same name. Now how they are different? They are different in terms of parameters or the inputs that we are passing while calling those functions. The first function is having 0 parameter, second one is having 2 integer parameters, and the third one is having 1 float parameter. Okay, so this is how these 3 functions are different. And how they are similar? They are similar in terms of the name of the function. Now one more very important point that you need to remember is, when we are overloading the function, first point is the name of the function we need to look into. So the name should be exactly same. The name of all the functions should be exactly same. Second thing is the parameters that we are passing as input to the function, they should be different for each of these functions. So the parameter list should be different for each of these functions. Third thing is return type. So when we are writing the definition of the function, there are 3 things that we write in the definition, that is the return type, name, and the parameter list. So you need to remember this thing, that the return type of the function does not make any difference in function overloading. So return type is something we should not focus upon when we are talking about function overloading. These might be 3 functions with different return type, but return type is not used to judge function overloading. The function could be overloaded only on the basis of difference between the input that we are passing to the function. So these inputs should be different. Even if the return type is different or it is same, it does not make any difference. So this is a common doubt that students have and they get confused about it. So just remember, whatever be the return type of the function, that is nowhere going to make change in the function overloading concept. And in function overloading, all the functions should have the same name and they should have different return types. So I hope this much is clear to you people. So we'll just move ahead with an example on function overloading. So we are having a function. The name of the function is display. What it is doing, it is taking two variables as input. First one is integer variable, second one is double variable. After that, it is simply printing the value of variable 1 and variable 2. Next, in the program, we have one more function and the name of the function is again display. Void display, void display. Now we are passing one single double variable as input. So if we look into the definition, this header of these two functions, we will realize that the name of both the function is same but the input varies. So we know that we can overload these functions. Now we'll have one more function. Now the third function is again having the same name and it is having one variable as input. The second function is having one double variable as input. Third function is having one integer variable as input. So although the number of variable is same but data type is different, so we can still overload them. So all the three functions, what they are doing, they are simply printing the value of variable that is given as input to these functions. So display, display and display. One integer, one double variable, one double variable and one integer variable. So these are the three functions which are in the same program. Now we'll see in the main function. Now we have come to the main function and we'll try to call this display functions. So in the main, first we have taken two variables, integer a and double b. Next what we are doing, we are calling the display function. When we are calling the display function, we are passing a. So can someone tell me quickly, out of the three, first, second and third, which function will be called with this statement?
Third. And the third one.
Yes, absolutely right. The third will be called because we are providing one integer variable as input and this is the requirement of our third function. Next function call would be display b. So b is a double variable. With this, what will happen? This function will be called. And the last call is display a comma b with one integer variable and one double variable. So the first function is going to be called. So this is how the call will be made and this thing will be decided during the time of compilation. So we are calling the same function 3 times, but depending upon the input that we are providing to it, it will be decided that out of the 3 function, which function definition will be executed. So this concept is called as your function overloading. Okay, so the same thing we have shown it in a more pictographical way. When display a is called, so this particular function will be called, the last one with integer variable. Display b will call this function with double variable and display a comma b will be calling this function which is expecting one integer and one double variable. Okay, now next thing is constructors. So I just hope everybody have the knowledge of constructor by now. So you must have used constructors in your JPL lab. So we will see how we can overload constructors as well. So everyone is having basic knowledge of constructors or not? Yeah guys?
Yes ma'am. Yes ma'am, we have.
Okay. So what are constructor functions? These are special functions with the name same as the name of the class. And constructor function do not have any return type. There won't be a return type of construction and they're basically used for initializing the variables. So m and n, this is the class add which is having two variables m and n. Inside this we have two constructor function. First add function, second add function, which is initializing the value of m and n variable. Now we'll come to our main part. So once, like when are the constructor called? So the very important thing about constructor that you should know is that a constructor function is called the moment you create the object of the class, and it is called automatically. The moment you will create the object of the class, automatically the constructor function will be called. This should be small a actually. The name of the class is small add. So add a1. So when you are saying add a1, you're creating the object and the name of the object is a1 and it is of class add. So with this, automatically your first constructor function will be called because you have not given any parameter as the input. Now the second call would be add a2 10, 20. So what will happen? You're creating the object. While creating the object, you're passing two arguments, or you can say two integer variables. So the second function, constructor function, will be called. So this is how we perform constructor overloading. So again, constructor overloading could be done using the difference in terms of the parameters that we are passing as input while creating the object of that particular class. Okay, now we'll see more examples. So this is our class add. Inside the class add, we have one sum function which is expecting two integer input. We have second sum function which is accepting three integer input. So we are overloading in terms of the number of variables. Now in the main, we have created the object of the class add. After that, we have called sum function and we have passed two integer variables as input. So the first function will be called. Next, we have called the sum function again, passing three integer numbers as input. So the second sum function is going to be called. So this is one more example of your function overloading. Now the next concept is operator overloading. Now just guys listen a bit carefully. This is little bit difficult, I must say, as compared to function overloading. So this is again a compile time polymorphism example. So in object oriented language, we can change the way operator works. So till now, if we see this symbol anywhere, we know that we are going to perform addition. If we see this symbol anywhere, we know we are going to perform multiplication. Same with division. So when we look at a symbol, mathematical symbol, it is there in our mind and we know that with this symbol, this particular task is going to be performed. But object-oriented programming concept has given us the power to change the meaning of these operators. So how do we change the meaning of these operators? We can change the meaning of this operator through the concept called as operator overloading. So again we are overloading, that means we are making these operators to work in different ways, in multiple forms, polymorphism. So we'll say we can change the way the operator works for user defined types like objects and structure. This is called as operator overloading. So in object oriented language, we are allowed to specify more than one definition for an operator in the same scope. This is called as operator overloading, and we can redefine or overload most of the built-in operators which are available. We can redefine and overload those operators. So this is the list of operators in C++ language which we can overload, and this is the list for the operators which we can not overload. So most of the operators in the C++ we can overload. And one more thing you need to keep in mind, that Java programming does not support operator overloading. So although Java is also object oriented programming language, but it doesn't support operator overloading. Only C++ supports operator overloading. So we'll be looking into the C++ examples. So one more thing, if we talk about Java, the only way we can say that Java supports operator overloading is when you write that system.out.println, you use that plus symbol, and with the plus symbol what you do, you concatenate the things that need to be printed on the screen. So for printing you use plus operator in between to concatenate or join strings or maybe the variables. So that could be one type of operator overloading, that your plus operator is not adding anything but it is concatenating, it is joining the outputs. So the same thing is written over here. Okay, now we'll see examples of operator overloading. So the first operator that we're going to see for overloading is your minus operator, which is a unary operator. Everybody knows what is minus operator. This is used to subtract the variable by 1. So when we write n minus minus, or you can say when we write minus minus n, what does this mean? It says n is equals to n minus 1. So this operator ka meaning that we knew till now is n is equals to n minus 1. But now we will see how we are going to change the definition of this operator. So we will take this example of class distance. There is a class named as distance which has the distance in terms of feet and inch. Next is we have constructor of the class. So constructor is distance and it is used to initialize the member variables of the class. So it is used to initialize feet and inch. Next we will come to the operator overloading function. So we are going to overload minus minus operator. Now how do we write it? You need to look into the syntax for writing it. The first thing is going to be the return type of the function. Next thing is going to be the keyword. What is the keyword? The keyword is operator. So this operator is the keyword which will always be there in all the operator overloading function. So we write void, we write the keyword operator, and after that we write the operator that we want to overload. This should be minus minus. So minus minus operator is the one which we want to overload. Now we are going to write the definition of this operator overloading function. In the definition, what we are saying that this function will increment the value of feet by 1 and decrement the value of inch by 1. So and after that it is going to print the current changed value of feet and changed value of inch. So now just see again, we have written a operator overloading function. Operator overloading function means that minus minus operator now will make that minus minus operator to behave in different form, or you can say different way. So what we are doing for that? Return type, keyword operator, and then after that the symbol that we want to overload, or you can say the operator that we want to overload. So we want to overload minus minus operator, and what we want, like how we want the new behavior of that operator. The new behavior of the operator should be that it should increment the value of feet, which is a member variable of the class, and it should decrement the value of inch, which is the member variable of this class. So now our minus minus operator is not used for changing the value of a variable by 1. Instead of that, it is used for performing 3 tasks: increase the value of feet by 1, decrease the value of inch by 1, after that print the new values of feet and inch. Now we'll see how do we call this function. So this is our main. We'll come to the main part. In the main, first thing that we need to do is create the object. As to call this function is part of the class, we can call it only through the object. So we have created the object. The name of the object is d1, and this is the object of class distance. So the moment we'll create the object, automatically our constructor function will be called. We have passed 2 parameters while calling the object. Next we have created the object of the class, and we have initialized the value of feet as 8 and the value of inch as 9. Now we have to call the operator overloading function. So how do we call it? For calling the operator overloading function, we need the object that is d1, and we need the name of this function. So the name of this function will be same as the name of the operator, or you can say the symbol of the operator. So how we are going to call it? We are going to call it this way: object name and then operator. So the way in which we call the operator function is bit different. So just keep this in mind. So we will write the name of the operator, and after that we'll write the name of the object. So we will write minus minus d1. So when we will write this minus minus d1, this particular function is going to get called. And what will happen when this function will be called? Feet will increment by 1 and inch will decrement by 1, and it is going to print the value of feet and inch. So is this clear? The output of the function, how will be the output of the function? Feet and inch decrement colon feet का new value is 8 plus 1, that is 9. Inch का new value is 9 minus 1, that is sorry, it should be 9 minus 1, that is 8. It should be 8. Okay, so is this clear to everyone? If this is clear, then we'll move ahead to the next.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to listen from other students as well. I don't want. Can you just quickly show thumbs up in the chat? So looking at the thumbs up, I can understand how many of you are getting. Quickly show a thumbs up in the chat. Okay, so I can see many people responding. Great. Okay. Fine. So I just hope no doubts. In case of any doubt, you can just unmute yourself and ask. Fine. Great. So I'm happy to see so many thumbs up in the chat. So we'll move ahead to the next program. Okay. So we'll take one more example of it, and it's like those who have not got it yet, they will be able to understand after this example. So the next example is for plus operator. It is again a unary operator. Unary operator means we need only one operand. So we are going to use plus operator, a simple program, class count. Inside the class count, there is a variable named as value. After that, we have a constructor which is initializing the value of value variable. Next is void operator keyword and then name of the operator, or I must say symbol of the operator. So void operator plus, and what is happening in this operator? It is simply incrementing the value variable by 1. So although we have given the definition, but in the definition also we are making it perform the same task which it generally does. But now we are working on the member variable of the class with this. So what it is doing, it is incrementing the value of value variable.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Can we put multiplication and division sign there in case instead of plus?
Yes. So this two examples we have taken of unary operator, and next example will be of binary operator. So plus, as I told you, any operator you can overload. So the previous list, except for the few operators, all the operators you can overload. You might write plus here, and inside you might form a pura calculator. That is also possible. Okay, so next example we are going to see for binary operator. Fine. So last function is display, which is simply displaying the value of value variable. Now we'll see main. Main may enter the number to be incremented. N input we have taken. We have called the constructor function. This constructor function will be called. Next, what we are doing, we have to call the operator function. For calling the operator function, what we are doing, simply plus and then name of the object. So with this, what will happen? This will be called. So if you will see, we have applied plus with the object, and what we are incrementing, we are incrementing a member variable. So if we are writing plus with the object, this function will be called and the member variable of the object will be incremented. So this was a simple example. Now we'll move towards something complex. So just concentrate everyone. Just keep your eyes on the screen and ears open for 5-10 minutes. So now what we are going to do, we are going to overload binary operator. Binary operator, everybody knows, plus, minus, multiply, divides, all these are binary operators. Why do we call them binary operators? Because they need two operands. So generally we put an operand before the symbol and one operand after the symbol. So we'll see how do we work with these binary operators. So we have taken a simple example of complex numbers. So complex number, everybody knows it has a real and imaginary part. So we have declared two variables, real and imaginary. Now inside the public access specifier we will be writing the functions. So the first function is a constructor function, which is simply used to initialize the variable real and variable image. Next, we are going to write the operator overloading function. So now we need to concentrate here. So how we have written the operator overloading function? Before that, we will just let's see on the right hand side. I'm just writing something. We know that if we want to add A plus B and we store the result in C, so how many variables we need in case of binary operators? We need two input variables, first input variable, second input variable, and we need one output variable. So there are three variables that we will need when we are working on binary operators, two input and one output. So this is what happens in our simple mathematics. Similar thing is going to happen with the binary operator overloading as well. But now we know when we are talking in terms of functions. So when we are talking in terms of function, this A, B and C, or you can say the input and output, are actually the objects. So we can say we need to add object A with object B and we store the results in object C. So OA plus OB gives OC. So for binary operator overloading, we will be needing three objects. Two objects will be the input and third object will be the output. Fine. Now the next thing is, whenever we are calling a function, in this case the function is the operator function. Whenever we are calling a function, we definitely need one object. So let's say using the object A, we have called the function. Fine. So we have called the function using the object A. So out of the three objects, we are done with taking object A. So object A will remove from the list. Now we are left to take object B and C. So what we will do, object B is again the input to the function. So we will pass object B as the input to the function. Object B we have passed as input to the function. Then so we are done with taking object B also. Now object C. Object C is the output. So what is the function's output? Function's output, you can say, you express in terms of the return type. So what you will say, your function will return one object. So to call the function, we will need one object. One object is passed as the input to the function and the third object will be returned by the function. So this is how we are going to fulfill our three object need of binary operator functions. Don't worry if you have not got it yet. We will see now how actually we are implementing it in the operator overloading multiple times. We'll see that. So this is our function, keyword operator, operator plus. We are overloading plus operator. So as we have seen that this function will need one input. So this OB we have passed as input to the function. So what is the input to the function? Input to the function is object. How do we know that this is then object? Because we have given the name of the variable as obj, and what is the data type of variable? Data type of variable is complex. What is complex? Complex is nothing but the name of the class. So our variable of type class is nothing but object. So this is how we create the object in the main. So this obj is one object which is provided as input to your operator plus function. Okay, so next thing is, it says that the return type is again of type complex. So when we write int as return type, then it returns an integer variable. But when we write complex as the return type, that means it will be returning an object of the class complex. So looking at this header, we know that name of the operator is plus, or you can say the symbol of the operator is plus. This function is expecting one object as input and this function is returning one object as input. So this input is nothing but our B, which we were deciding to pass as input, and this return type is nothing but our C, which we were deciding to pass as output to the function. Now the next thing is, now we'll see the definition of the function. So the definition of the function says complex operator plus complex obj. Inside this, what we are doing, we need to return a variable or object variable of class complex, that means the first thing that we need to do, we're going to initialize one object, which ultimately we are going to return. So complex res, res is an object of class complex. Next, what we need to do, we have to, everybody knows how to add two complex numbers, add the real part of two numbers, add the imaginary part of two numbers, and store it in the C variable. So what we are going to do, this is going to be our output. So we say res.real. As res is an object of complex, it will be having its own real variable, and it will be having res.image. So what we'll say, res.real is equals to real plus obj.real. What is obj? Obj is the input that we have provided to this function. Next is res.image is equals to image plus obj.image, and ultimately it is returning the object res. So when it is returning the object res, actually it is returning two values, res.real and res.image. Generally when function returns, it can return only one variable at a time. So the function is very smart, and instead of returning one integer or float variable, it is returning one object. So that objects will be having two variables within it, that is res.real and res.image. Now the next thing is we are simply printing real part and imaginary part. We'll come to main. In the next slide again I am going to explain this same thing to you. So just listen carefully and just try to grasp as much as possible. So we'll come to the main part now. In the main part we have to call this function. So first thing, we know that this function is binary function, so it will be requiring two inputs. So what we did, we initialized two complex numbers, C1, object C1 and object C2. C1 values passed are 10 and 5. This constructor function will be called. So C1.real is 10, C1.image is 5, C2.real is 2, and C2.imaginary part is 4. So we have got our two input complex numbers, and both the numbers are having imaginary part and the real part. Now the next thing is, we have got the input. Now we need to get the output. And how we are going to get the output? Using our plus operator. And how plus operator? By calling this blue color function. This function is something that we need to call. So how we are going to call it? We are going to call it this way. We will say C1 plus C2. So C1 is the object that is used to call the plus function, and C2 is passed as the input. So when we write this thing, C1 is calling the plus operator function and C2 is passed as the input while calling the function. And whatever the function is returning, it is saved in the, or it is returned in the C3 variable, and C3 variable is again an object of class complex. So this is how the call for the function operator plus is performed. So this plus symbol, when you are writing here, it is very dynamic in nature, and what it is doing, it is calling this particular function, that is operator plus function. So once this line is executed, what will happen? The addition of C1 and C2 ka real as well as imaginary part will be added, and it will be stored in the variable, or you can say the object name as C3. So this line is actually C3.real is equals to C1.real plus C2.real, and C3.imaginary is equals to C1.imaginary plus C2.imaginary. So this one line is executing that task or performing that particular task. And ultimately we are going to print the value of C3 real part and C3 imaginary part. C3 ke through we have called this print function. So what will happen? It will print C3.real and C3.imaginary. Now we'll see the same thing again. We'll see how we are calling the function. So in the main, how did we call the function? We created two objects, C1 and C2. After that, we call the function in this way. Complex C3 is equals to C1 plus C2. Now, we need to understand what is C1, what is C2 and what is C3. All these three are objects of the class complex. All these three will be having their imaginary part as well as their this real part. Yeah. So what is C1 used for? C1 is used for invoking the function. Invoking the function means calling the function. So we know that this is our function, this is an operator. We need to invoke or we need to call the function. For calling the function, we need one object. So what we did, using C1 plus, we called the operator overloading function. This is what we have done using C1 plus. So this is the object which is responsible for calling the function. We know that we cannot call a function which is inside the class without the object of that particular class. So using C1 we have called the plus function. After that, what is C2 then? C2 you just imagine as the input. In the bracket we pass the inputs while calling the function. So here the syntax is such that we don't put bracket, but C2 is the one which is passed as the argument to the function. So C1 invokes the function and C2 is passed as the input to the function. And now when we'll come here to the function, in the function this is our definition. So our C2 is complex obj. So whatever will be the values of C2, that will be stored. This is call by value. This will be stored in C2.real will be stored in obj.real. C2.imaginary will be stored in obj.imaginary. And it is returning something. This returned value will be stored in C3. Now we are coming inside it. It says real res.real is equals to real plus obj.real. Res.imaginary is equals to imaginary.obj.imaginary. Now obj we know is this input. Res we know जिसमें add होगा and we are going to return the value. Now what is this real and imaginary? This real and imaginary are the real and imaginary part of the object using which we have called the function. That is C1 ka real and imaginary. So it's going to be something like this. This is C3 real and imaginary. This is going to be C1's real and imaginary, and this is going to be C2 real and imaginary. As C1 has called the function, we do not need to mention C1.real and C.imaginary. So this is same as this dot real and this dot imaginary that you know. So this is how each real and imaginary part is connected with the respective object. So is this clear? So two objects C1 and C2 are passed as an argument, or you can say these two objects will be the input and these two values will be added to give the value of C3. So just let me know if any doubts, or if you are just quickly write in the chat for this particular overloading example, how much did you get it? So it's perfectly fine if you are not getting 100%, that's fine if you're getting 20%, 30% or whatever. Just mention in the chat so I'll get to know how much more I have to focus on this. It's completely fine to write even 0% if you're not getting it. So Shreyans have got 85%. Okay, so and others 75%, 90%, Sagar, Mihir. Fine. So, okay, so I can see many replies in the chat. So 80%, 90%, and okay, great guys. So if you're getting this much, it's really good. Okay, 76.59, superb Ritesh. Okay, fine. So like 80 to 90%, 80%. Manav has got 50%. Fine. So guys, it's it's theory. So once you will implement it, your concepts will be even better. So in the lab, mostly probably in the this week labs or maybe next week lab, you will be implementing this concept, and during the lab time again I am going to explain you the same concept. So it will be like your revision, and I hope after that you will be able to execute and understand the operator overloading function. So if anybody wants me to repeat anything or anybody is having any doubts, please feel free to ask, else we will move to the next slide.
Ma'am, what will be the output for your output?
Output क्या होगा? So output will be, see C1 is 10 and 5, C2 is 2 and 4. ठीक है? And after that we are calling C3 dot print. So C3 का real will be 10 plus 2, that is 12. C3 imaginary will be 5 plus 4, that is 9. So what will be printed on the screen? We'll go to the previous slide. So what will be printed? Real and real का variable क्या था? 10 plus 12 plus I and then 9. So this will be printed, because when we are printing the print function, we are calling only for C3, and C3 mein we are adding C1 and C2. That means C3 real is equals to C1 real plus C2 real. C3 imaginary is equals to C1 imaginary plus C2 imaginary. So right now I have not got the screenshot of the output, but the output will be 12 plus I and 9. 12 plus I 9 will be the final output. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, now we'll come to the next time, that is our runtime polymorphism. We have some time left, so let's start with this topic. So we have already seen two types of compile time polymorphism. Now we are going to look into the runtime polymorphism. We have already discussed that runtime polymorphism is late binding, or also called as dynamic binding. So that means during the time of compilation, it is not decided that out of the multiple methods, which method will be executed. When is it decided that which method is going to get executed? During the time of execution of program. So compile time pe the machine will not be knowing which program function to execute. It will get to know that out of the multiple forms available, which form is going to get executed during the time of execution or runtime, you can say. Now overriding. In the runtime polymorphism, the concept is overriding, that is function overriding. So just remember this thing. There are two things: function overloading. Function overloading is when you have multiple functions with the same name, and it comes under compile time polymorphism. Now the second concept is function overriding. Overriding is runtime polymorphism. And now we are going to look into what is function overriding. So overriding is a perfect example of dynamic binding. Overriding, actually it's a concept of inheritance. Overriding happens when both parent class and the child class have the same method. Overloading में क्या होता था? The same class is having multiple methods with the same name. In overriding, there will be one parent class, there will be one child class. Parent class and child class, both the classes will be having a function with the same name. So now we have to decide that which function should be executed. Like when we were studying about the inheritance, we have discussed that the child class is having access to its function as well as the functions of your parent class, provided that the functions of the parent class are either protected or public. So child class is having access to its function as well as access to parent function. Now there is a function with the same name in parent class as well as in the child class. Then how will it be decided कि out of the two functions, which function is going to get executed? So that we will see in the concept of function overriding. So function overriding is an example of runtime polymorphism. When child class declares a method which is already present in the parent class, then this is called as function overriding. And here the child class method overrides the parent class. That means the child class method dominates and it overrides the parent class method. So when we are calling a function with the same name, it is the child class function which is getting the importance or the dominance, and it overrides the function which is there in the parent class. So this is a simple example: class A, class B. So class A is having the function display and class B is having the function display. Now what will happen? Out of these two functions, the child class function will be called and the function of the parent class will be overridden. It will be overridden and the function of the child class will be overriding function. So we'll take example on this concept. So we have a class A, we have a class B. Class B is inheriting class A. Now inside class A, we will see we have a function called as disp. What it is doing? It is simply printing a message superclass function. So we know that parent class is also known as superclass. So it is simply printing superclass function. And what is the function in class B? Class B is again having the function with the same name, disp, and it is saying subclass function. Now you will notice one more thing, that there is no difference even in terms of the value or the parameters that we have passed as input. So the headers are absolutely same. There is no difference in the header. Return type is same, name of the function is same, and return type is also same. So everything is same. What is the difference? The only difference is that one is in parent class and one is in child class. Now we'll come to the main part. In the main part, we'll create an object of class A. So we have created the object of parent class. After that, we are calling the disp function. So what will happen? Parent class is having access to only its disp function. So there is no confusion. This object obj can access only the display function of the parent class. So it will simply print super class function on the screen as this particular function is going to get executed. Next, we are going to create the object of the child class. Now the issue arises that this class B is having access to its disp function as well as the disp function of A class. Now how we will decide that out of the two functions to which this object is having access, out of these two functions, which function it will select? So we cannot randomly select, we cannot do that akkad bakkad Bombay wo wala thing. So we need to decide that concrete that out of the two functions, which function is going to get executed. So when we are calling obj2.disp, then what happen? Out of the two functions, the original function of class B will dominate. And what happen? Always the function of the child class will get executed. If we are using the object of child class, it will execute the function of the child class only. So what will happen? The function of the child class has overwritten the function of parent class. So it has dominated and this function has been suppressed. So what will be the output? The output will be superclass function. So this function call will call the superclass function and the second function call will be calling the child class function. So the function in the parent class is called as the overridden function. So this is overridden function and the function of the child class is called as the overriding function. So these words you should know for your when you are appearing for the exam. There might be some questions related to what are overridden function and what are overriding function. So this is the concept of runtime polymorphism of overriding. Okay, so we'll see one more example on this and after that we'll wind up the lecture. So it says to access the overridden function of the base class. Suppose if you want to use the base class function and you don't want to use the child class function, then how can you do that? We have the function with the same name in the base class as well as function with the same name in the derived class. What we did, we created two objects, derived 1 and derived 2 of the derived class. After that we are calling derived 1.print and then what will happen? This particular function will be called, that is the function of the derived class. But suppose due to some requirement you want to call the function of the base class using the object of the derived class, then how it can be done? It can be done in this way, that you write the object of the derived class dot operator, name of the base class, scope operator and then name of the function. So what will happen with this? Using the object of the derived class, you will be calling the print of base. Instead of saying only print, what you are saying? You are saying print of base, scope operator and print. So in this way what will happen? The function of the parent class will be called using the object of the derived class. So this is going to be the output. So guys, we'll just wind up this lecture for now and we'll be continuing